All right, guys. Andrew with Defiant Tactical, and boy, have I got one for you today. A couple of days ago, the Tennessee Senate passed a bill, which I think is now going off to the governor to potentially be signed into law, that authorizes some Tennessee teachers to carry firearms in the classroom or at school. And on my personal social media, we had a discussion about that. A friend posted about it, and I kind of got in. And man, I was astounded at some of the absolute asinine fuddery that was being spouted on that damn page from people that I would not expect to do it. People that are otherwise ardent supporters of not just the right to arms, but the idea of being armed and personal security, then those concepts of that responsibility that I normally associate with those people, and also kind of wanting the government to stay the hell out of their business, suddenly are just saying things that like completely blows my mind. So I want to talk for a minute and vent, maybe apologize if you guys are going to have to hear some of this, but vent a little bit about what this law is and what this law isn't, and some of the just surprising content that came out of it. I've got my notes up over here. I'm going to try and bring them over so it doesn't look like I'm looking way off screen here. There we go. We're going to see how that looks. That's a little bit better. Okay. So let's talk for a minute first about what this law is, and if I can figure out how to do so, I'll link it in maybe in the description. This is Senate Bill 1325, 1325, okay? And it's amending existing law, existing code. So I'm not going to read all of the statute or the bill, but this is what it says, okay? It says that an employee of the school, which would be a teacher or a janitor, excluding a student who is also an employee, so they aren't included in this. But a student, or rather, an employee of the school board, can carry a concealed firearm at their school, only at their school, not at any school, only at their school, under the following circumstances. Number one, they have to have an enhanced concealed weapons permit, or an enhanced ECP, right? And again, EHCP is what they're called, enhanced handgun carry permit. And what that means in Tennessee, of course, Tennessee, you don't have to have a permit to carry anymore. And I don't know if they did away with the lower tier, but there used to be two tiers of permits in Tennessee. One is the enhanced and one is the regular. The regular didn't require classroom. You could take it online and then get your permit. I think it typically took about 4 hours online. Okay. The enhanced concealed weapons permit was in person, had to be in class, an 8 hour long class, and included a live fire. Okay, that's the one I went and got, and it's got you had to do 50 rounds live fire. It's not tactical at all. You just fire in 10 round strings, if I remember right, at like 7, 3, 7, and maybe 10 yards, something like that, just basically to make sure that you're safe with the weapon. Okay, so that's what the class was. Okay, they have to have the EHCP. Number one. Number two, they cannot be prohibited by any state or federal law from possessing or carrying a firearm. Okay, so number three, they must have the written authorization of, number one, the chief LEO over the school, wherever the school is. Number two, the school board director. And number three, the principal. All three of those entities have to authorize this teacher or school employee to carry. All right? And they have to complete 40 hours of basic training on their dime. And the statute, the bill, references what training? The same training SROs go through. The 40-hour training that an SRO must attend. Obviously, they're typically going to be law enforcement, I would suppose. But the same 40-hour school, what do they call it? School policing. The same 40 hours that they have to go through for school policing training for 40 hours, these teachers have to go, or these school employees have to go through as well. And on top of that, they have to go through 40 hours every year, according to the bill. The SRO only has to do 16 hours of in-service every year. So these teachers are required to do the same basic training as the SRO and then have to do not 16 but 40 hours a year on their dime, paying for their ammo, paying for their time, right? All on the teacher's dime. Or I say teacher, but I mean school employees' dime. Okay, in order to carry. Let me do that again. They have to have an EHCP. They have to have written permission from the chief of police, from their school board, director, and from their principal. They can't be prohibited from possessing a firearm by state or federal law. And they have to complete 40 hours of training every year in order to carry, which is more than the SRO. Okay, that's what they have to do. Now, people are reacting to this like it's some sort of, general license to just willy-nilly carry a firearm wherever they want in the school. I don't want to get into whether that's a good idea or not, okay? I'll share some thoughts about the Second Amendment in general in a different video. But that's not what this is. Like, not by any stretch of the imagination, okay? This isn't telling, the 70-year-old teacher to throw her snub-nosed .357 revolver in her purse and go to teach elementary school, okay? That's not what this is about. Now, I'm not saying that those people shouldn't be armed too, given the right circumstances. But this is not that, okay? It's also not, I'm suspecting, right? I'm a little bit embellishing. I'm reading between the lines here. I'm suspecting that this isn't also trying to form these teachers into some sort of, SEAL Team 6 operator, active shooter, hunter team. That's not what this is about either. So we have to make sure we understand what the intent is here. That's not what's going on, right? The idea is that teachers have something other than covering the students with their bodies at the moment that an active shooter breaches their classroom. Because right now, that's the option. And that sucks. So, I guess, let me branch into my opinion a little bit, I guess. Security is not a simple, especially of a large facility like a school, is not a simple task, okay? It's got to be layered. There are multiple variables. There's multiple threats. There's multiple ways to address security. But all of it's done in general in layers, okay? And we build security in layers because it allows us to do what I kind of go use a mnemonic or whatever of D's, right? I get to delay, I get to detect, I get to deny, and if it comes down to it, then I defend, right? And those barriers, those concentric efforts, security efforts, build up to hopefully prevent any sort of security incident to begin with, right? I have a fence, and then I have locked doors, and I have cameras, and I have an alarm system. And all of those things are layers so that I don't have to shoot an idiot in the face with my shotgun at 2 a.m. Because I'd really rather not, right? But I can't stop short of, I can't stop at saying, well, I have these preventative, ultimately delaying tools in place and detection tools in place. I've got to have something that I can use as a reaction. Because you have to ask, I'm putting a fence up to delay, well, hopefully to deny, but ultimately, really what those things do is they buy you time, right? Someone wants to assault your home, the fence is going to be an impediment, but if they really want to, they'll get through it. The locked door is going to be an impediment, but if they really want to, they'll get through it, right? So I'm buying myself time, right? I'm giving myself early warning devices, lights and alarms and cameras, motion cameras. Those things are giving me early warning. For what? Because they themselves don't stop a man intent on killing you. So what are they giving you early warning for? So that I can shelter my family. Okay. And then what? Wait for the police? That's fine. 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long it's going to take the cops to get here. And then what? Because there's still a determined man that's just being slowed down that wants to kill me. Right? And I know that I'm concocting a situation here, but I'm using it to illustrate a point. What is the purpose of delaying and denying and detecting? It's to give you time to prepare yourself to defend. With what? A fucking firearm is what? Okay? That is the tool with which we defend our lives. Now, obviously, there are some people who use other things to defend themselves, yes. But ultimately, in general, in modern America, the firearm is the tool that we use. That is what all of those things are buying you time for, to get a goddamn gun and get it ready and stage yourself and your family so that when that guy finally does get through your door, your family is safe and you put a bullet in his chest and that's the end of it. Okay? That's the point. Now, why is that different than my child's school classroom? It's not. There is no difference. We have all of those efforts in place. They have outer perimeter fences, and they should have inner perimeter fences, and they have surveillance cameras, and they have SROs roving, and they have access controls for their doors. All of those things for what? To deny? Yes. To delay? To detect? For what? So that if there's an active shooter, there's time to put into place their procedure, their active shooter response drill, like they did at Uvalde. They saw this guy coming through the goddamn parking lot, and so they implemented their procedure. And they locked down, right? But sometimes, not only are those things in place to buy you time to get ready and do your job, sometimes they aren't executed properly because there's usually a human component. Especially when we come, whether it's our home or the school. People forget to lock doors. People forget to turn on their alarm systems. People prop doors open. And so those policies and procedures, while they should be enforced as well as possible, and I have a background in security, one of the primary jobs of a roving security officer, including an SRO, is to investigate alarms and to investigate prop doors. That was a priority for our perimeter security where I worked. Okay? So yes, you investigate those alarms. Yes, they enforce it. Yes, they educate. But it still happens. And just like what happened at Uvalde, someone propped a door open because that was ingrained in the culture. You're out with the kids or whatever. You prop the door open. The door was left propped by a rock. The guy got in, if I remember how this went exactly. He got in, and then he got to the classroom. And so I asked the question again. They delayed and they detected and they put in place those other barriers to slow down and prevent. And some of them were bypassed, some of them worked. The cameras worked, their SRO or whatever, someone saw it because if I'm not mistaken, they were told to shelter in place. So that part of the policy worked, even though there was a gap. One failure, which is that a door was left open. They delayed and they detected and they denied for what? So that they could implement their procedure and shelter in place. For what? The teacher wasn't armed and therefore it was just a killing field. It was a killing field. And all the SROs, all the cops in the world, all the cops at Uvalde, had they been there, they might have been able to stop it immediately, but they didn't because they weren't. Okay? That is what the school policy and procedure is for. It is to identify, it is to detect and to deny and to delay the breaching of the school and therefore the breaching of the classroom, hopefully long enough for authorities to get there, but there's no guarantee because those policies and procedures don't work. Systems don't always work. So when it comes down to it, the question is, what do you want a teacher to do when the active shooter is crossing her threshold? Like at Uvalde. What do you want them to have in their hands? Because that teacher at Uvalde had one choice, and that was to be a bullet sponge. And that's not an acceptable answer. So I don't care what you think about guns. I don't care if they give you the heebie-jeebies or whatever. They make you feel uncomfortable. And, I saw a comment, I don't want to have guns. I teach littles. A gun is not immoral. A gun is not evil. It is not inherently bad. It's not going to bite your child. Okay, you're an adult. I carry firearms. I have everywhere, every day that I can. And I have 3 children. And they have grown up around me with firearms. And there is nothing inherently bad about firearms that makes me a bad father, that makes me unable to interact with young children because I have a firearm on my hip. That has no bearing at all on your ability to interact with or teach children. So I don't even understand that comment. What would you have the teacher do? Be a bullet sponge and then watch as her 26 children get massacred. Because that's the answer right now. Damn all the rest of it to hell. It doesn't matter. All of that is just delaying action. To delay for what? And Cops can't always be there on time. SROs can't always be there on time. Some of the things that people said that just, so my opinion is that schools should have firearms in the classroom. Okay. In fact, I think I am a stickler for training. I absolutely believe that people need to be well trained. I believe that is part of the spirit of the well-regulated militia that the Second Amendment refers to, and that's something else that we can get into another time. I believe it's your responsibility to be well trained. But I also acknowledge that not everybody is going to do that due to either desire or ability. And that's okay too. But I also acknowledge that you don't have to be a fucking SEAL team operator to shoot someone in the chest at 7 yards trying to break into your classroom. Okay? You don't. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's been concerns about, weapon retention and someone stealing a weapon. That's fine. Those are valid. Those are valid concerns. Okay? Maybe we put the weapon in a wall-mounted safe like a fire extinguisher. Maybe that's where it belongs. And when we go into shelter in place because there's an active shooter, the teacher gets it out. That's fine. Okay? But they need them. As much as they need the ability to really solidly lock down their classroom door, as much as they need a camera and an SRO, as much as they need access controls for the school perimeter, as much as they need a fence, they need a firearm in the classroom. Because that's just the reality of what we live in right now, whether you like it or not. Okay? And I'm not even going to get into the politics of firearms. I'll creep too far. But there were some surprising opinions. Moving on. So that's kind of where I stand on it. There were some surprising opinions that came out of it. And it was so just baffling to me because the same bullshit arguments that people were proffering for this is the same kind of bullshit arguments that people offer for why people shouldn't carry in public. And it's bull. Okay? It'll just be taken from them. Well, again, weapon retention and training is a real issue. But there isn't a rash of people on the street carrying every day that have their weapons stolen from them and killed. Like, that's not a common occurrence at all. Now, I'm not saying that as an excuse for people to not learn weapon retention or carry with a retention holster or carry concealed. But I'm saying it's a concern, but don't paint it as though that's a reason not to carry. Or for a teacher to not be armed, for God's sake. I'll get onto some statistics here in a minute that kind of debunk that. People complain that there's not enough training. Not enough training? 40 hours a year is more than the people making that complaint probably do. It's more than probably you in the video do. 40 hours a year of school policing training? Are you kidding me? And that's not enough? That's more than the fucking SRO does. And you're sitting here trying to say it's not enough training? Get out of here with that, man. There are some people that said that basically, they're worried that along the same lines, they're more worried about untrained people in the street with a firearm than criminals. That's the same bullshit, only let the qualified people carry, let the experts handle it kind of thing. And I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't be trained. I keep saying that because I know people are going to miss it and respond to this video, wrong. I'm not saying people shouldn't be trained. I'm just saying that having this superiority complex, well, the unwashed masses are not well enough trained to carry a firearm to protect themselves, so they shouldn't, is bullshit. Okay? And it is a problem. People should be well trained. But the average gunfight is super close range, and watch some videos from John from Active Self-Protection. 99% of those videos are people who have zero training. And guess what? They do all right. Usually. And I'm not saying that because we don't need to train. I keep saying that because I believe strongly in training. I'm just pointing out that you don't have to be well trained to protect yourself with a firearm. Okay? That little 5-shot if your frame of reference for personal defense is the 3 to 5 yard range, worried about a mugger, that little 3 to 5 shot or whatever J-frame revolver that you can shoot is probably going to do the job. You're not a gunfighter, but you can protect yourself from that little threat. Okay? You're not a meat eater, and that's okay, but that's not what you're going for. Okay? But it's totally bullshit to sit here and say that you're more concerned about the average uneducated firearm owner than criminals. Okay? Let's look at some statistics. Okay? And some of these things I just Googled. Some of them I found online from either the CDC or small arms survey, that sort of thing. The small arms survey estimates that in the United States right now there's approximately 400 million firearms. To give you an idea, that's half of all the guns in the world in the United States, with a population of about 300 million people. There are more guns than people by a good bit, okay? We have a ton of firearms here. Now, with that many firearms, you'd think with all these unwashed masses running around with firearms totally unqualified to touch them, there'd be a lot of accidents, right? No. Nope. Estimated about 50,000 accidents a year. In contrast, the CDC estimates between 1 and 3 million defensive firearm uses every single year. 1 to 3 million. What's the fucking problem? Why are you so concerned about people who are unqualified carrying firearms? Yes, it's something that I don't like either. And when I see a guy running around in a Uncle Mike's holster with his, XD halfway flopping out, yeah, I chuckle a little bit and I'm like, man, that guy needs to get some training. But guess what? He's not a fucking threat. Okay? Statistically, that's not a problem. To give you some context, okay? Remember, 400 million firearms, 50,000 accidents a year. There are approximately 280 registered cars in the United States. And every year there's 2 million accidents. There's just a little over half as many cars as guns. And there are 2 million versus 50,000 accidents annually. If you want to be worried about something, be worried about that. But the idiots walking around in shitty holsters who, haven't pursued enough training, many of them like the ones that are criticizing the school employees that are going to carry with 40 hours of annual training, are not the ones to be worried about, except that they spout their mouth off about this kind of thing. I saw the opinion that they should be focused on other things like perimeter or access control. Well, first of all, we don't have to do one, but not the other, right? This isn't an either or. And why people seem to think that it is, I do not understand. The reason we're talking about the arming of the staff is because it's a bill about arming staff. It's not because we're saying not to do those other things. The Senate bill doesn't say arm the staff, don't worry about the access control. It just says these are the circumstances where the staff can be armed. If you are interpreting that to mean that, there's no focus on access control, well, that's on you. The bill doesn't say anything about that. But secondly, as I mentioned earlier, access control, perimeter control, fences, detection systems, they don't solve the core problem of violence. Right? The core problem of violence is this dude is going to bypass those things unless someone puts a bullet in him. Unless someone stops him. And so, yet again, those other efforts are absolutely necessary. But a fence doesn't stop an active shooter from killing a child. It just slows him down. The locked door outside the school doesn't stop an active shooter from killing a child. It just slows him down. So, and I will say that from when I used to teach active shooter classes, one of the things that we would often cite, I haven't looked into the statistics since, it's been many years now, is that typically an active shooter will bypass a locked door, which is awesome, right? That's really good. Statistically, if we know that, then, locking a door and sheltering in place is probably going to suffice. But it doesn't always. And doors fail. And people fail under stress. And so having something to stop the threat in the classroom is important. There was a criticism that having some teachers armed that are going to go through this training and others that aren't because they don't would leave gaps in security. And that is just an absolutely stupid argument. Right now, we don't have any, legally armed teachers at school. And we rely, in the best of situations, on 1, maybe 2 SROs to handle security for the whole fucking campus. You're not worried about that gap in security, but you're worried about, say, a third of the teachers being armed, leaving a gap, a smaller gap? What is that argument? What is that logic? It's not there. That doesn't make any sense. You'd rather leave it on 2 SROs who are not able to be everywhere, leaving a gigantic gaping gap in reaction, than leaving a smaller gap because there's other armed teachers. I don't even understand that. Why is that a criticism? That doesn't make any sense. Don't say that. And then there was people who were just like, yeah, we should leave it to the SRO, leave it to the professionals attitude. And again, it's just like my mind is blown. Like, we would never say that. I would never say that, and many of these people making that claim would never say that to a person about concealed carry in public. Don't carry. The cops are really never too far away. It's really unlikely you'd ever need it anyways. So no, don't bother. No, I would never say that. Because at the end of the day, the cops can't be everywhere at once. And it's abundantly clear that if you become the target of deadly violence, the only thing that's going to save your life is you, or if you happen to be fortunate enough to have someone else step in on your behalf, which you have no control over. So you have to be ready to protect your life if it comes down to it. And you can't expect law enforcement or security or anyone else to do it for you. You cannot delegate the responsibility to protect your life. You can't do it unless you have something like the Secret Service. And we don't. So why would we would never give that advice to someone about concealed carry. Why would we tell someone that at school? Why would it be different? My children attend a school that has 2 SROs, and they're lucky because most schools only have 1. They have a 6,000 square foot, 2-building campus on 130 acres. You want to tell me how those SROs are supposed to react to an active shooter in time to prevent them from getting to, one of the classrooms? Some of those hallways are 200 yards long. How can that be sufficient? It's not. It couldn't be. It's impossible. So you want to talk about gaps in security, going back to that. There's a gap, leaving it to the SRO. Okay? I'll wrap up with this because I've already been going for a half fucking hour. This is the core question that you have to ask. The core crux of the problem is this. What does a teacher do at the moment where an active shooter is crossing their threshold? What do you want the teacher to do? What do you want them to be able to do? Your child is in that classroom. What do you want that teacher to do? If the answer is take the bullets for the kids, your child is going to die. That's not my answer. My answer is that I want that teacher to have a firearm. I want them to have a firearm, and I want them to shoot the active shooter. And then we need to find out why the shooter got that far into the school in the first place. But that's besides the point. You need to answer the question. I don't care what you think about firearms. I don't care what you think about guns in school. I don't care what you think about concealed carry. I don't care what you think about training and capabilities in school. What do you want the teacher to do when all of those other preventative measures fail and there is an active shooter crossing the threshold at your child's classroom? Whatever you think there is what you need to think about this bill. Catch you guys on another one.